Guten Morgen, Schüler! Today we are learning about the reflexive verbs and the pronouns which one has to use with them. For example, wäscht sich die Hände. He washes himself the hands, or as we would say, he washes his hands. Well, what do you say when you want to clean your car? Ich wasche mein Auto. I wash my car. And when the laundry is dirty? Ich wasche die Wäsche. I wash the laundry. Then waschen isn't reflexive, but just used reflexively, right? Okay, maybe that was a bad example. The verb ärgern has to be used with the reflexive pronoun. For example, ärgert sich über seine Noten. He gets himself worked up about his grades. In English, we have the option of leaving himself in the sentence, he gets himself worked up, or taking it out of the sentence and just letting the context do the work. He gets worked up. I read this sentence somewhere once. Mein Bruder ärgert mich gerne. My brother likes to annoy me. Du ärgerst mich. You annoy me. Genau! See? Ärgern isn't a reflexive verb. Okay, I have finally found a good example of a reflexive verb. Beeilt sich. He hurries, or he hurries himself. I believe you are finally right. Sich beeilen is a real reflexive verb. I think that's enough for today, Schüler. Tomorrow we will talk more about these reflexive verbs. Guten Morgen, Schüler. Since we had some problems when talking about reflexive verbs yesterday, I did a bit more research last night and found that there are actually two kinds of reflexive verbs. Unechte reflexive Verben und echte reflexive Verben. Verbs that can be used with reflexive pronouns but don't have to be are called unechte reflexive Verben, fake reflexive verbs. For example, waschen. Wäscht sich die Hände. He washes himself the hands. He washes his hands. Wäscht sein Auto. He washes his car. That one is not reflexive. Verbs that have to be used with a reflexive are called echte reflexive Verben, real reflexive verbs. For example, beeilen. Beeilt sich. He hurries himself. Why does everything in German have to be so complicated? It doesn't! And this isn't even that complicated. Come on, people. Can we stop this madness? Today I am finally going to teach you how reflexive verbs should be taught in schools, but rarely ever are. Here's the thing. There are verbs in German that are used reflexively. There are verbs in English like that too, but they are much more rare. For example, to pride oneself is a verb that is always used reflexively in English. You can't pride someone or something else, and you can't simply pride. You have to pride yourself, and he has to pride himself. This is commonly referred to as a reflexive verb because the grammar gods of old said so.
You must use this verb with a reflexive pronoun.
Verbs are just verbs. You can use them reflexively if you want, but the verbs themselves aren't reflexive. The car drives itself, or I drive the car. Peter Pan sees himself in the lake, or I see Peter Pan on TV. Everyone loves Raymond, and Kanye loves himself. You get the idea. The point is simple. Reflexive verb is a term that grammar nerds made up to make you feel better about using verbs reflectively, but it just ends up confusing people. There are verbs in German that are always used reflexively. There are a ton more that are commonly used reflexively, and a few others that are occasionally used reflexively. The question you should ask yourself is not, is this verb reflexive, but rather, is what I am trying to express reflexive? For example, wäscht die Wäsche. He washes the laundry. This is not reflexive because the thing being washed is not part of the subject. Wäscht sich die Hände. He washes his hands. He washes himself the hands, literally. This is reflexive because the things being washed are part of the subject. If I wash my son's hands, however, it's not reflexive as his hands are not part of me. In order to say that, we simply use the normal personal pronouns. Ich wasche ihm die Hände. I wash his hands, or literally, I wash him the hands. As I mentioned, there are certain verbs in German that are always used reflexively. There aren't nearly as many of these as people seem to think. Here are a few examples of those. Wir haben uns erkältet. We caught a cold. You can't catch someone else a cold. You can only do that to yourself. But for some reason, German always requires that you include this reflexive pronoun, while in English, we simply rely on context to tell us that we are doing this to ourselves. Ich höre mir ein paar Lieder an. I listen to a few songs. Again, you can't listen to something for someone else. English uses context, while German uses reflexive pronouns. Now, to be fair, it would make perfect sense to say, Ich höre ein paar Lieder an. Unfortunately, you can't do that in German because reflexive pronouns are a thing and people like using them, so it just has to be done that way. You see, reflexive pronouns and grammar things in general are kind of like the song that never ends, because some people started singing it not knowing what it was, and they'll just keep on singing it forever just because this is the song that never ends. Some people started singing it not knowing what it was, and they'll keep on singing it just because this is the song that... Think of reflexive pronouns kind of like separable prefixes. They don't make much sense to us English speakers, but they're required for the sentence to make sense to a German. Let's take the verb vorstellen. You can use it to mean to introduce or to imagine. One of those you can do to other people, but the other one is used exclusively reflexively. Neither of them will make any sense without the prefix vor, and neither of them will make any sense without the reflexive pronoun if it's being used reflexively. For example, Ich stelle meiner Freundin meinen Bruder vor. I introduce my brother to my girlfriend. This one is simply an indirect object and is not reflexive in any way. Ich stelle mich ihrer Mutter vor. I introduce myself to her mother. This one is reflexive because the person doing the introducing is the same one as the one being introduced. Ich stelle mir ihre Mutter vor. I imagine her mother. This sentence is definitely going to get you in trouble, so be careful with the difference between the accusative, mich, and mir in the dative. Ich stelle mir den Strand vor. I imagine the beach. You know, while daydreaming during your German class when your mind goes numb trying to understand all this reflexive stuff. This one is reflexive because the one imagining something is the same as the one for whom it is being imagined. Okay, smarty pants, I get it. Can we please just get to the part where you teach about the reflexive pronouns and how to use them already? Sure. The system is simple. Think of the verb as a mirror. The subject looks into the verb and sees a reflection of itself on the other side. Just like in a real mirror, what you see on the other side is not an exact replica of the subject, but rather a reflection, or reflective pronoun. Occasionally, the mirror is one of those one-way mirrors, and the subject is the cop on the other side. They don't see themselves, but rather the direct or indirect object on the other side of the mirror. You can, however, see yourself in one of those one-way mirrors if you just focus on yourself instead of looking through the glass. This is what happens when you see a verb that doesn't have to be used reflexively, but you do it anyway. Example time! Er badet sich. He bathes himself. This one is being used as if you are the criminal in the interrogation room. You can only see yourself. This verb is usually used reflexively. He can only see himself through this verb, as both he and himself are the ones being bathed and the one doing the bathing. Er badet seinen Hund. He bathes his dog. This one is being used as if you are the cop on the outside of the interrogation room. The verb is the one-way mirror. He can look straight through the mirror to see his dog on the other side. When it comes to the pronouns, they aren't that difficult either, and they actually simplify this whole issue about the verbs. The only ones that aren't the same as the personal pronouns are the third-person pronouns, er, sie, and es, and the plural version, sie. They all use sich as their reflexive pronoun. Since the formal you, sie, is always the same as the plural they form, sie, this pronoun also requires the reflexive counterpart, sich. If you don't remember from my video about the personal pronouns, the formal you is actually evolved from the plural form, sie. For those of you who like charts, I would recommend this version. At first glance, this may confuse some of you. The point of this chart is to compare when the personal pronouns and the reflexive pronouns are the same and when they differ. The reason I like to show things this way is to show the reflexive and personal pronouns are often the same. Ich liebe dich. I love you. Du liebst nur dich. You only love yourself. Both of these use the pronoun dich, but only one of them is reflexive. The personal pronoun is the same as the reflexive. So if they're the same, does it really matter which one is reflexive? Yes. Then you can tell when to use sich when it actually does change. Kanye liebt ihn nicht. Kanye doesn't love him. Kanye liebt sich. Kanye loves himself. That being said, it is also helpful to know that if wir is not being used as the subject, it is always uns, regardless of how it's used. Wir sind gute Freunde. We are good friends. Not reflexive, nominative, subject. Meine Mutter mag uns. My mother likes us. Not reflexive, accusative, direct object. Meine Mutter kauft uns die gleiche Kleidung. My mother buys us the same clothes. Not reflexive, dative, indirect object. Wir mögen uns. We like each other. Reflexive, accusative, direct object. Wir kaufen uns die Kleidung. We are buying ourselves the clothes. Reflexive, dative, indirect object. Fine, I get it. There's no such thing as a reflexive verb, just verbs that are used reflexively. Some are used reflexively all the time, and some are just as likely to be used non-reflexively as they are reflexively. Can you at least give me a list of verbs that I can memorize so that I understand which ones are always used reflexively? Of course, but lists are boring, so how about some example sentences and labels that show you if they are always this way or just sometimes? That'll do, donkey. That'll do. Always reflexive. Etwas ansehen, to watch something. Du siehst dir ein paar YouTube-Videos an. You are watching a few YouTube videos. Benehmen, to behave. Mein Bruder benimmt sich in der Schule nicht. My brother doesn't behave himself in school. Beeilen, to hurry. Die Lehrerin beeilt sich in das Klassenzimmer. The teacher hurries into the classroom. Erholen, to recover or recuperate. Das Mädchen erholt sich im Krankenhaus. The girl is recuperating in the hospital. Erkälten, to catch a cold. Wir erkälten uns, wenn wir draußen gehen. We catch a cold when we go outside. Freuen auf, to look forward to, and freuen über, to be happy about. Freut ihr euch auf das Wochenende? Are you looking forward to the weekend? Sie freuen sich über das Ergebnis. They are happy about the result. Gewöhnen, to get used to. Ich habe mich an meine neue Wohnung gewöhnt. I have grown accustomed to my new apartment. Konzentrieren, to concentrate. Konzentrier dich an deine Hausaufgaben. Concentrate on your homework. Verlieben, to fall in love. Das Paar hat sich verliebt. The couple fell in love. Wundern, to be amazed or surprised. Wundert sich, dass noch am Leben ist. He is amazed that he is still alive. Sometimes reflexive, but don't have to be. Aufregen, to get worked up or upset. Immer wenn ich mein Essen zu laut kaue, regt sich mein Vater auf. When I chew my food too loudly, my father always gets worked up. Mein lautes Kauen regt ihn auf. My loud chewing gets him worked up. Erinnern, to remember. Ich erinnere mich an meine schöne Zeit in Deutschland. I remember my beautiful time in Germany. Du erinnerst mich an einen Kürbis. You remind me of a pumpkin. Abtrocknen, to dry off. Nach dem Bad trocknet sich ab. After the bath, he dries himself off. Nach dem Bad trocknet seinen Sohn ab. After the bath, he dries off his son. Das Bein brechen, to break one's leg. Ich habe mir das Bein auf der Treppe gebrochen. I broke my leg on the stairs. Die Gangster haben mir das Bein gebrochen. The gangsters broke my leg. Die Haare bürsten, to brush one's hair. Das Mädchen bürstet sich die Haare. The girl is brushing her hair. Ihre Mutter bürstet ihr die Haare. Her mother is brushing her hair, the girl's hair. Anziehen, to get dressed. Zieh dir die Kleidung an, oder ich werde dir die Kleidung anziehen. Put your clothes on, or I will put clothes on for you. Fühlen, to feel. Wie fühlst du dich heute? How do you feel today? Ich fühle die Sonne auf meiner Haut. I feel the sun on my skin. Die Zähne putzen, to brush one's teeth. Der Junge putzt sich die Zähne. The boy brushes his teeth. Ich putze meinem Sohn die Zähne. I brush my son's teeth. Legen, to lie down. Sie legt sich eine Weile auf das Sofa. She lies down on the sofa for a while. Sie legt das Baby auf das Sofa. She lays the baby onto the sofa. Interessieren, to be interested. Ich interessiere mich für Pokémon. I am interested in Pokémon. Pokémon interessiert mich. Pokémon interests me. One more category, it's complicated. Vorstellen, to imagine or introduce. When this one is used to mean imagine, it is always reflexive. When it means to introduce, it depends who is introducing whom to whom. Er stellt sich vor, ist im Schloss. He imagines he is in the castle. Er stellt sich vor. He introduces himself. Or he imagines. We don't actually know here. Context is key, and in this case, we don't have any. So it depends on what we meant to say. If we meant to say he introduces himself, it means that. If we mean he imagines, it means that. Er stellt sich vor. Er stellt sich ihre Mutter vor. He introduces himself to her mother. Er stellt seiner Freundin seine Mutter vor. He introduces his mother to his girlfriend. Entscheiden, to decide. This one can be used reflexively or not. The meaning changes ever so slightly. See if you can pick up on it. Der Chef entscheidet, was wir am Montag machen. The boss decides what we're doing on Monday. Ich entscheide mich für die Maultaschen. I make up my mind for the German ravioli. The reflexive version is more personal. It implies that the decision was made for oneself instead of someone else or for the group. I hope this clears up some of the confusion around the so-called reflexive verbs. If you're still struggling with this or you need help with other grammar topics, I have a ton of videos on this channel about German grammar. For videos like this one, in which I flip the way that you think about German grammar, check out my You're Doing It Wrong playlist. Das ist alles für heute. Danke fürs Zuschauen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!